Good evening. Thanks for joining us for a late night update on the Texas primary here on KHOU.com.
Tonight's winners will go on to the general election in November, but already there is controversy in Harris County after reports that the vote count could be delayed.
Adam Bennett joining us from Harris County Election Central in Northwest Houston. Adam, what's causing the delay?
Well, basically, the elections administrator here is disputing the characterization of this as a delay. More on that in just a second. But she tells me, Isabel Longoria tells me, that all the polls have closed. There is nobody left in line. And right now, this is the busiest time for those machines, those voting machines, and for those ballots to be brought back here to the central counting station and counted. About 1 a.m. or so is when they expect to really hit the peak. Now, this whole controversy, this started just after the polls closed at 7 when the Texas Secretary of State, which oversees the elections, put out a statement basically saying that Harris County would not be able to tally up all of the primary results within 24 hours after the polls closed, which they said is required by state law. And after SB 1, this new voting law could be punishable as a Class B misdemeanor. And they said that the issue had to do with what they called damaged ballots, having to do with the paper ballots produced from these machines. But Isabel Longoria, the elections administrator, she says the so-called damaged ballots, she disputes that characterization. She says that because these machines print out 2 ballots, Harris County is the only one that prints out 2 paper ballots from the machines. Some of them are getting stuck in the machines or jammed up because people are trying to put them in at the same time. She says those are then flagged for separate review by both Democrats and Republicans and captured on a live video feed. So she says everyone's vote will be counted there. She also disputes that all of the votes have to be tallied within 24 hours. All of those results have to be counted. She says that law actually just requires those election boxes to show up here at Central Count within 24 hours. It's a goal she says she'll be able to hit. Take a listen. Here's what she had to say about that.
Certain parties, right, perceived perhaps that meant that 24-hour rule that we had to count everything in Harris County right now and have it all done within 24 hours. It's never been the case. We're a big county. We know we're going to get all those boxes back within the next 24 hours.
Yeah, and still all of this has drawn a lot of criticism from Republicans around the state. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick accused Harris County of trying to crash elections in Texas. Longoria responded by saying that the early results have already been posted, that election night results are being posted as they come in. And she said basically the facts speak for themselves. But to wrap up, she called tonight, in her words, an average election night in Harris County, and she disputes any kind of notion of any kind of a delay. We'll send it back to you.
A busy night regardless at Election Central in Harris County. Adam Bennett, thank you.
The race for Texas governor, well, that wrapped up early. Governor Greg Abbott is celebrating an easy victory in the Republican primary, punching his ticket to November. You see there, outlasting Allen West, 67% in the Republican primary. In his speech tonight, the governor says he has done more for education than any other governor before him, but he also promises to return power to the parents.
There is no government program that can replace the role that parents play in the education and health care of their own children. So I'm running for re-election to bolster a parental bill of rights that will restore parents as the primary decision maker for their child's education.
Governor Abbott is being challenged by a familiar face, former Congressman from El Paso, Beto O'Rourke, winning big in the Democratic primary. He's also talking about the state of public education in Texas.
It's not that our teachers are not trying hard. In fact, they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to support their main job right now. It's because we have so underpaid those teachers and started to attack them from the highest positions of power. When I am governor, we are going to support public educators and public education and make sure that every
That's Beto O'Rourke in Fort Worth tonight. He says he is staying in battleground Tarrant County tonight. Then he'll be back on the campaign trail tomorrow. We are joined by a couple of political experts to break down some of tonight's results. Political analyst Bob Stein and Charles Blaine with Urban Reform.
So the governor's race has been determined. It's incumbent Greg Abbott versus former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Charles, I want to start with you. As the governor looks ahead to re-election in November, what are some of the concerns that his campaign has?
Well, I think with the numbers that he got last night and going forward, I think he's really excited about it. So I think more so than concerns, what he's hoping to do is really engage those border communities. We saw him spend a lot of time there towards the end of the primary. We know Beto was a little weak there in some of his previous runs. And so I think Abbott and the Republican Party as a whole is going to spend a lot of time there courting those new voters who started voting Republican in 2020 and then trying to encourage undecideds and other folks to come over. So I really expect to see him spend a lot of time there over the next couple of months, really just trying to engage himself with those voters.
But big picture, is it going to be a struggle for him to do that?
I don't believe so. I mean, we've seen overwhelming support for him, especially as of late out in the border communities, especially because he's been putting a lot of support to the wall, which is something that Republican primary voters have loved, but also a lot of folks at the border seem to really like. And so I don't think it's going to be too much of a struggle. I think he's going to take the time to do it and, lay the groundwork for it over the next couple of months. And I think the Republican Party up and down the ballot is going to benefit from that.
All right, Bob, my question to you is, does Beto have a chance?
No.
And why is that?
I think it's what Charles said. I mean, you can say that he's attractive, he's young, he's articulate, he's smart, but this is still very much a red state. And I think, in fact, the question is, can Beto help the ticket as opposed to helping himself? There are down-ballot races that can be won, particularly if Mr. Paxton gets renominated as AG, Mr. Miller as the Agriculture Committee. Remember this, in 2018, Greg Abbott won by 14 points. Everybody else on that ballot could not break single digits in their victory, whether it was Lieutenant Governor, AG, and they were 3 and 4 percentage point victory. The governor now, this race and this primary, really puts the governor in an interesting position. He can be a national leader of his party. He can talk about ways to reach out to the Hispanic community, touch on issues that can be presidential, or he can be the cautious Republican he's always been. So the real question is, he's got capital here. Does he spend it on, for instance, getting Ms. Garza the nomination for AG, a much better candidate than would be Mr. Paxton, or does he walk away? Does he talk about issues he thinks are important and not the ones that Dan Patrick talks about? Does he want to be a leader of his party, or does he just want to get reelected? This will be his 4th term. And the real question is, what does he want to do? The legislative agenda right now is controlled by Dan Patrick, not by the governor. And I think at this point, the question for Republicans is, who is the leader of the Republican Texas Party? Is it Dan Patrick, who seems to have weight over the legislature, or the governor? And I think there's every reason to think the governor could be a presidential candidate.
But I have to ask about Beto. He has a record of losing, and so why do Democrats keep putting him on the ballot? Is it really because they think that, okay, look, he's attractive, he's enough to help other races? I mean, what is the appeal there?
I think that your assumption is, why the Democrats put him on the ballot? He put himself on the ballot. There was nobody else who wanted to run for governor. And look at the last candidate we had for governor on the Democratic ticket. I bet you can't remember her name, former sheriff from Dallas County. The simple fact of the matter is, for 20, 25 years, the Democrats have been out in the desert, and they have not been able to build a bench. They spent most of their time filing lawsuits against Republican legislatures. They have not been able to build up the base of candidates that could run. You don't see the Castro brothers running for anything. You don't see candidates like Henry Cisneros coming out of retirement, a Bill White, who didn't do very well against, the former Governor Rick Perry. I think the problem right now is that Democrats don't have leadership, and they don't really have a very good message, particularly when they're looking at a base in the Valley, Hispanic voters, who are now increasingly, starting in 2020 and before. Now, I think this is a real challenge for Democrats in Texas, and demographically, they should be doing much better. There are 2 House seats in the Valley that may be up for grabs for Republicans come November. That's pretty unheard of. Now, I think that the real challenge for Beto is trying to help recruit, retain, and get elected candidates at the county, at the state level, and most importantly, hoping that something happens, something that breaks. And I don't think we're going to get another freeze. So the real, the issues he's got going for him just don't seem to add up. Again, things happen. And we're looking at a world that's very unpredictable, but you have to really count. I mean, the National Party brand is not good. So where do you look in Texas? My guess is you look for something like a Hail Mary, and it's happened. It got Donald Trump elected. Nobody thought in 2016 he was going to be elected.
And
but I don't think this is going to happen for Beto.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Time now to walk you through two other big statewide races and the results there, starting with the office of Lieutenant Governor, second in command in the state of Texas. The Lieutenant Governor also commands the Texas Senate. Here we have Republican incumbent Dan Patrick seeking a third term. Officially now, come November, he has clearly won the Republican nomination with 78% of the vote there. Moving along, want to give you a snapshot now of the Attorney General race. By far the most competitive race of the evening. You can see here from the numbers, we have incumbent Ken Paxton, the Republican race here for Attorney General. Ken Paxton with 43% of the vote, followed by Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush with 22% of the vote. Former Texas State Supreme Court Justice Eva Guzman with 18% and Congressman Louis Gohmert with 17% of the vote here. Now, all three of these challengers, while opponents all agree that some form of integrity needs to be restored to the AG's office amid Paxton's legal troubles. However, Paxton has the support from friend and former President Donald Trump. Remember, we talked about these numbers and just how competitive it is. It looks like we are headed toward a runoff with the Attorney General's race. This has been a race that our Grace White has been following closely tonight as well. Let's turn to her now for more insight about a possible runoff and the numbers. Grace?
Mia, here's what we're watching closely. If you look at the results statewide, you see Paxton on top, Bush coming in second at 22%. But then if you zoom into Harris County, things start to change. Paxton still on top, but Guzman now in second place at 30%. As you mentioned, we know this will now be a runoff for the incumbent Ken Paxton. We're still waiting to see officially which candidate will join him. It's a very crowded, very competitive race, and you can see why if you switch here to Montgomery County, things change again. Gohmert there at 18% comes in second place just in Montgomery County. If we go down to Fort Bend, Guzman jumps back into second place. So this is one we're still watching very closely. Again, we know it's going to be a runoff for Ken Paxton. We're just waiting to see which candidate will join him. We also want to take a look on the Democratic side for Attorney General. In Harris County, Garza is on top at 31%. Jaworski coming in second in Harris County at 26%. Let's take a zoom out now to look at the whole state. Garza also on top there, 44%. Jaworski with 21%. Will be a runoff in this race as well. We want to also show you the Lieutenant Governor's race that we've been watching all night. Dan Patrick now we can say has won his primary, 77% there. And on the Democratic side for this race, again, these are statewide results now. We're looking at Collier with 43%, Beckley at 30%, but it's close. Braley down at 28%. So we'll have to keep watching this one through the night, Len and Mia, to see which candidate goes to a runoff there.
All right, Grace White, thank you so much. Now let's take a look at some of the major county judge races in the Houston area. Three biggies. First up, Montgomery County. And these are pictures up here of election voters counting tonight. So that's nice to see democracy in action. The incumbent Republican primary, Mark Keogh, way out in front here in this race over the Pastor Billy Graff. 66% for him with 42,000 votes so far. Sarah Countryman, who is the mayor of Montgomery, far back in third. Now let's go to Fort Bend County, where growth has been the issue. And KP George, the incumbent, this is only the early vote tabulation, but he is way ahead of Earl Bonner, who is a Gulf War veteran, emergency management expert, according to his website. But so far, KP George dominating in this race for Fort Bend County judge, trying to go back for a second term. Now, the biggest county in the state, Harris County judge, only early reporting with 2% of the precincts. The incumbent, Democratic incumbent, Lena Hidalgo, is way out in front of Erica Davis, who grew up in Sunnyside. Hidalgo, who of course surprised everybody 4 years ago by winning this race. She's now a known name politically, and she's way ahead in the Harris County judge race tonight, and looks like she'll be heading on to the November elections. Mia?
Let's take a look now at a few other congressional races in our area. District 2 stretches from East Harris County up to Kingwood and over to the Woodlands. It is currently held by Republican Representative Dan Crenshaw. And tonight you can see from the results, Dan Crenshaw being the incumbent here and winning the Republican nomination with 75% of the vote.
Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher is defending her seat. That's in District 7. Now stretches into Fort Bend County. She's running unopposed on the Democratic side, but several Republicans are hoping to challenge her in November. Here's a look at a couple of these folks. Right now, it looks like Johnny Teague at 45%, followed by Tim Stroud. If this holds up, this is 26% of the votes reporting. Precincts reporting. Looks like Teague and Stroud so far ahead, looks like they could be headed to a runoff.
Now let's check on District 8, which has been held by Republican Congressman Kevin Brady since 1997 and represents parts of Cypress up to Conroe and over to Livingston. Brady is retiring after 25 years, so he left the seat wide open. And tonight, it looks like with 53% of the vote, Morgan Luttrell, with a familiar last name, appears to take this race. Once again, 53% of the vote, and that's with 69% of the precincts reporting.
Yeah, no runoff in that race. That does it for us right now.
Thanks so much for joining us, but the election season is now just really starting to heat up. So we'll be working around the clock for you, keeping track of all the results on our website, KHOU.com, and our KHOU 11 app. Then the KHOU 11 morning team will have the very latest for you. That's starting tomorrow morning at 4:30. Remember, you can also text the keyword results to 713-526-1111. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good night.